All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this huddle number 6. Going to be talking with Ann Dunn, who is with Oakland Animal Services. But first, I want to introduce you to our illustrious leader for our huddles, our moderator extraordinaire, Gina Knepp.
Well, I don't know about all that extraordinaire stuff, but I'm happy to be here. I'm Gina Knepp with the Michelson Found Animals Foundation. We're co-funding this challenge. Thank you for all being here today. Getting lost pets home where they belong is like running through my veins. I've been preaching it for a long time, and now suddenly people have caught on. So I do think that it is one of the things we can focus on that will definitely move the life-saving needle. So today we're going to talk about community, and my friend Ann Dunn from the city of Oakland is here. Unfortunately, we lost the other speakers, so I will help you, Ann, in any way I can, and let's start this conversation and let's make it robust and vibrant. Let's go.
Great. Hi, everybody. I'm really excited to be here. And the extraordinary part about Gina is, really what we're doing is copying Gina and Front Street. And I don't know how many of you saw the Innovation Showdown a few years ago when Front Street presented their ideas about lost and found. And it was just such a revelation, right? That this is where we should be focusing our energy, given the number of animals that come into our shelters, that we put the energy into reuniting them instead of rehoming them. It's just a game changer. So I'm really happy to share what we're doing. And one of the things I would say, the takeaway from us is if we can do it, you can do it. We're a pretty regular municipal shelter. Everything I'm talking about is new to us. So we're really changing our culture as I speak. And it's exciting to start to see things come to fruition. So am I able to share my screen?
You should be able to.
Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to walk you through pretty quickly some of the stuff that we're doing, and then just happy to answer questions. So the main focus for me is really everything I'm going to tell you about is stuff that's done by our volunteers. And so I am actually today, I'm celebrating my 1-year anniversary of being the director at Oakland Animal Services, which is really exciting. And I started here as a volunteer. It was like almost 15 years ago. I started here as a volunteer. And at that point, it was back in the day. And so our live release rate was pretty low. And one of the things that as a volunteer was always really demoralizing was to see the number of animals that came in that had microchips, but there wasn't an effort to follow up on them. And so often that meant that somebody would sit here for weeks longer than they needed to. And so another longtime volunteer, when I first started as the director, she said, can we please put more energy into lost and found and reuniting pets? And so, I would say the smartest thing I did was to say, if you can help with that, absolutely. So really, most of this is about empowering volunteers and giving them access. So what I'm going to talk about today is our Finder Foster program, our Roam team, which is our volunteer team that's focusing on lost and found, and how we're really looking at other resources in our community and connecting with those so that we're not just thinking about the animals that are in the shelter. So our Finder Foster program, this is all very new to us. So we just started this in October. And what we're doing is for animals that either don't have microchips or we're not able to connect quickly with the guardian through a microchip, is whenever an animal comes into the shelter it's a found animal, we ask the person, the finder, would you be willing to foster the animal, letting them know that our primary goal is to get those animals reunited with their families, but that if for some reason we're unable to do that and they wanted to adopt, that they would be given first priority. So far we've helped 29 animals, and as you can see, 18 of those were adopted by others. So 10 were adopted by the foster or the friend of the foster. And of the 29, just 4 were reunited. So I'll mention that, come back to it. 4 went to transfer, and 3 are still in their foster homes. So on the one hand, I'm really excited about this because these are all animals that never had to spend a night in the shelter, and are getting adopted, and are getting on their way. The part about the 4 going home, getting reunited, just tells us that our overarching goal isn't being met. So we're really trying to figure out why is it that we're not connecting with the guardians, and you know, it's definitely part of our everything that we're trying to do is to get to be more effective at making those connections. So to me, this is really exciting. And again, this is right out of Gina's playbook. So this is just something that we took from Front Street, which is posting every lost animal on Nextdoor. And for me, there's 2 parts to this. One is that prior to us doing this, if you went to Nextdoor in Oakland, what you would see every single day is somebody saying, I found a lost animal, what should I do? Somebody would say, bring the animal to Oakland Animal Services. Somebody else would say, don't bring the animal to Oakland Animal Services. They're going to kill the animal. You know, and there'd just be this whole back and forth of kind of debating who we are, what resources we provide in this community. So there's so much distrust of the shelter, as I'm sure a lot of you can relate to. So one part of this is really changing the perception that people have of us, because they can see we're really making an effort to get these animals back home. The other part is that, you know, oftentimes we are connecting with neighbors who are the ones that are realizing that this is their neighbor's lost animal and reaching us that way. So our Roam team, which is Reunite Oakland's Animals, this is all volunteers. And so the volunteers have access to Pet Point. And so they see every single day a new animal comes in listed as stray. They do all the posts. If they think that the photo is inadequate, they come in and take better photos. So this has just been a game changer for us. And as I say, it's, you know, it's not just about what our volunteers are doing, but it's really about engaging with the whole community. And so we're seeing, you know, so often it's a neighbor that will reach out and say, you know, that's my neighbor's dog, and I'm going to go tell her that the dog is at the shelter. And then the other piece that I shared here is the kind of feedback that we're getting. It's just more and more people just reaching out to say, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for making this effort. And it's, you know, I just know that it's, in some ways it's intangible, but it really just helps change the perception that people have of the shelter in this community. Sorry, my moving forward isn't working. So the other part about this is going the extra mile. So just thinking about, you know, we're making a lot more effort to let people know that their animals are here, but we're not necessarily reaching them. And so one example of this is, so Kima, who came into the shelter, our volunteers posted on Nextdoor. A neighbor saw the post and reached out and said, that's my neighbor's dog. But we still didn't hear anything. And so then the volunteer, who's really the mastermind behind all of this, she then printed out the Nextdoor post, and she went to the person's house and said, you know, we have your dog. She connected with the son, and a young son who said, yes, that's our dog. And then we still didn't hear anything. So then our officer went out and had a conversation. They were actually afraid to come to the shelter. They were worried that they were in trouble, that something bad would happen. So our officers went out and said, no, all we want to do is get your dog back. And then they went back to the shelter, got the dog, brought the dog back home. So just realizing there's so much extra work that goes into it, but of course it's thrilling when we make those connections. So then the part about not just relying on the information that we're sharing, but really looking at what's out in the community. There's so many kind of small post boards, places for people to post lost pets. And so a lot of what our volunteers do is just a lot of matchmaking between these boards, seeing a lost dog here, a found dog here, and letting people know that their animal, and a lot of this are for animals that never even come into the shelter. So these aren't even necessarily shelter animals. But so here's an example of a woman who had posted her dog, but she hadn't come to the shelter, and so she didn't realize we actually had her dog. So our volunteer saw this post and realized, here's the dog, and she put it all together. And then the volunteer reached out to the person who had posted on Pavus to say, your dog is here, and she was able to come in the next day and go home. One more story is Harley. So Harley's caretaker was out walking her, and he had a brain injury, and so he has moments where he just kind of is unable to see, and he let loose the leash and lost Harley. So when she came into the shelter, she didn't have a microchip. She was spayed, but she didn't have a microchip. And we actually adopted her out, and she ended up getting returned about a month later. And so there was no connection, obviously, between the person who was looking and us having the dog. But then it ended up being a couple months later, when Harley was brought back to the shelter. The original guardian was still looking, and so as she tells the story, she says, I don't know why I did it, but I just thought, like, she's got to be out there. So she did another post, and our volunteer saw it and made the connection. And so we are able to get Harley back. But part of why I'm sharing this story is because we also try to use these opportunities to do messaging in the community. Oops, sorry, for some reason that's not working. So, sorry, I'm not sure why this is. Okay, so using our social media to not just tell the great stories, but to use it as an opportunity to say, if Harley had had a microchip when she came into the shelter, she could have gone home the next day. The fact that she didn't have a chip meant it took us months for this family to get reunited. So, you know, to the community, how important it is to have a microchip. And also sharing the part about the story that the original guardian did not give up. If she had given up, we would have never made the connection. So it was the fact that she was still out there trying to find her dog. The timing just happened to work, that our volunteer saw that message and was able to get them back together. So we're trying to use our social media in a way that is engaging. So this is a thrilling story. And if you're paying attention to the story, get the moral of the story, which is what you might do differently yourself with your own pets. So, you know, I was talking about how it was, you know, for me, when I was a volunteer and seeing animals in the shelter that we knew could have gone home. And then as a shelter director, it's hard not to think about things just as numbers, right? Like if we had fewer animals in the shelter, these are the things that we could do, and kind of starting to get a little bit detached from the reality of what this all means. So I just wanted to share this video of, this is Harley's family who had spent months looking for her, and Harley months away from her family, and this is them getting reunited. So what this is all for. So that is my presentation.
Do you know you're on mute?
That darn mute button, if it could just give me like a jolt, you know, like a tase when I need to talk, but it doesn't. Thank you, Anne. That was great. You guys are doing amazing work in Oakland. I'm proud to know you. There were a couple of questions. So what percentage, if you know, of the finders actually agree to foster? Any idea?
I don't know the exact number, but my guess is it's actually relatively high, probably 30% or more even. I'm surprised. Our numbers are pretty low right now. So, you know, we're not just, our intake is pretty low, but I honestly, I was a little skeptical about doing the finder foster. I didn't think that many people would be willing to do that, but it's really yes, it's really uplifting to see how many people do want to help in that way.
Yeah, it's pretty tremendous. And, we have to think also that, like, my time in Sacramento, we calculated that there were 250,000 owned cats and dogs within the 98 square miles of the city of Sacramento. And the fact that we only saw 10 or 11,000 of those animals really means to me that lots of them get lost, right? But they're getting reunited without our intervention.
Right.
So as shelters, what we could be doing is at least sharing information on our websites and on our Facebooks. If you do find a lost pet, these are all the things you can be doing. They don't necessarily need us. They just need the tips, and the suggestions on how to do it. But if we get involved, and that's even, that's good too. Another question was, what type of access in Pet Point are volunteers authorized? And I'm presuming that question is related to the use of Nextdoor. You go ahead and share how your volunteers are doing it. I'm happy to share how we did.
Yeah, we don't actually limit access at all. So one of the things that I think was really important is the ability to add notes. So they're not just looking at Pet Point, but they're able to communicate with staff. And so it really keeps everybody in the loop. And so these are trusted volunteers, but it's interesting. We've had a lot of conversation about giving volunteers access to Pet Point, and there are people that have reservations about it. But I would say one of my kind of overarching things is I used to run a nonprofit cat rescue organization that I started when I was a volunteer at the shelter. And so initially we were all volunteers. And so I have this, this idea that if you are an all volunteer organization, you have no qualms about giving anybody any kind of authority. But once you have staff, then all of a sudden it's like, we can't let volunteers do that. So I'm very big on empowering volunteers.
I'm with you 100%. So in Sacramento with Nextdoor, it was 100% volunteer managed, and they use a little snippet tool. They did it from home. They'd get on Pet Point, take the picture or copy the picture. And we had a standard template, which looks like you do as well. And did
because
it.
We do.
Copy away. Plagiarism is so rampant in animal welfare, thank goodness. But, and they've been doing it since 2017 with nothing bad happened. Nobody died, no volunteer went rogue and posted, FUs on Nextdoor, nothing. Only good things came out of it, which I think we should all, and I work for 100%, volunteer for 100% volunteer-based animal shelter in Idaho. And if we don't let our volunteers do things, we won't do anything, right? So thank you for being progressive, because most people in our communities are a lot smarter than we are, actually. There was another question. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say one other really important piece of this is I'm just focusing on the volunteers. We really are having a whole cultural shift around, staff being so much more involved in helping with this and being excited about it. But still with that, without the volunteers, this would not be happening. So we just simply don't have the capacity to do this in a meaningful way. So we need our volunteers.
100%. There was a question similarly related to, do you get pushback from volunteers or fosters about finder fosters not going through formal orientations?
No, I mean, we had a really great conversation before we did this. We kind of sat down and did a brainstorm about, what were the reservations, what were the, what might come up, what are things that we might have to think about. I would say that there's definitely, I don't know, we started it as a pilot for that reason, because we just thought, regardless of reservations, let's not let that stop us. So and rather than speculating on what might go wrong, let's just try it and see. So I think people have been very pleasantly surprised at how well it's going.
So a couple more really good questions. So when someone finds a foster, are you actually processing that animal into your system, doing official paperwork, or are people just filing a found report and agreeing to house the pet? How are you doing it?
So we went back and forth on this, and the reason we're doing what we're doing has to do with our municipal code. And so we work with our city attorney, because the municipal code essentially says that if somebody finds a lost animal, they shall bring them to the shelter. And so our city attorney interpreted that as we needed to do some form of intake, but we don't have them, they're never housed at the shelter. So we do a formal intake, but we ask people to bring the animal into the shelter too, because we want to scan for the microchip. So we want to make sure that we see that the animal. We also want to do a cursory exam, because we it's two parts. If there is something wrong, of course we want to address it, but we also want to, for the benefit of the person who's fostering, we want to see if we can catch anything.
Are you doing intake vaccinations and flea treatment or any of that stuff that you would
Yeah,
normally do?
we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing everything we would normally do.
Yeah,
It's just
that's
that they
good.
don't have to stay here.
Good. And then what about your insurance? I mean, I'm presuming that Oakland's a lot like the city of Sacramento. If a non-traditional foster has a behaviorally unsound animal that they're fostering, or is there any concerns or, discussion about the liability aspect?
So another thing that we wanted to disclose all this with the city attorney too, just to make sure that we weren't off doing something and then causing problems. So, and we talked a lot about this. And so what we ended up with is a waiver that says, we have not done any kind of evaluation or assessment, and we're giving you this opportunity, but we can't be held liable for who this animal is. And that's far has worked.
And then my eyes aren't going there, but there was a question about what about the requirement of having the animal in your shelter if someone comes to look for the animal and it's not there. There's no law that says the animal has to physically sit in the shelter for the owner to redeem them. You're posting them on your public facing sites, right?
Right. And, with COVID, no one's coming into the shelter regardless. So everything is on our website. And again, our focus when we're talking to the finder foster is, we really want to make clear that our goal is to get this animal reunited. And so that we're going to do everything that we can. And we also ask the volunteers, the fosters themselves, please talk to your neighbors, please we give them flyers that they can put up, found animal. So we're really asking them to participate in helping get that animal reunited. And but because all the animals are on the website, we're not concerned about them not physically being here.
Yeah, and I had a really brilliant question that just fell out of my head. It'll come back to me at 3 a.m. I'll call you. Let's see. I don't think I missed any questions. Sharon, did I miss anything? Oh, Joe Stafford would like to know if you would share your documentation and if you have any.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then, I know what it was. Are you, and I haven't looked at your lost and found site on your website lately. Are you telling people if you lost a pet, it may be in a private foster home? It just struck me that we should be doing that.
Yeah, I don't, of course, I don't do any of this work myself, so I'm not 100% sure what is on our website. So I can't answer that question, but that's a good question.
Yeah, and it just came to me. So it's something that I think we should start recommending to people. And then, this is an interesting question. Do you find that finders claim animals are strays just to get resources?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I would say it's for whatever it's worth, all my philosophy is, I'd much rather, I just don't worry about that stuff. There might be somebody here or there taking advantage, but most people need the support and are happy to help in this way. And they're doing us such a service, right? Like I was just talking to staff earlier today. I was asking questions from them, like in preparation for this, to get their feedback on what are the challenges, what's not going well. And when it was that people, when it comes time to get the adoption fee, it can be a challenge. And I'm like, why are we charging an adoption fee? Like these people are helping us, right? These animals are never even in our shelter. So I'm glad to hear that, because I didn't even realize we were doing that.
Yeah, very cool. Emmy asked, does anyone send postcards to addresses on microchips if phone numbers don't work? Are you routinely sending out a notice of impoundment to the address of record? I think most shelters are.
Yeah, we definitely are. And we are, like, I didn't get into all the other things that we're doing, but we are really making a lot more effort now to follow up on those chips.
Here's a really interesting one, Lori Daly. Thank you, Johnson. Thank you so much for putting it up there. It came directly to me. They're seeing issues with rescues offering to take lost dogs to avoid the animal from coming to the shelter, but they only offer to foster the highly adoptable dogs and aren't actively looking for owners so they can put into their own, they can put them into their own adoption program, I presume for revenue generation, I don't know. And then these dogs disappear forever. They're either rehomed or transported out of state. Looks like she says rescues do not want the shelter to get these dogs and to compete with other adopters or rescuers to pull them from the shelter. Any ideas on messaging from the shelter on how to prevent rescues from stealing lost pets? Man, I have a lot of opinions about this. I'm on the Cal Animals board, and we're actually working on potential legislation that will, I don't want to say put restrictions on rescues, but I think that there needs to be some work in that area. Anne, do you have any thoughts on this? Because I'm hearing a lot of this right now.
Yeah, well, I think it gets into so many different things, where I was saying, like I shared that video at the end of the presentation, because I think that it's our responsibility to try to reunite animals with their families, right? And so it's better for the families, it's better for the animals. And I think that there's, all the judgments of like, well, if this animal is loose, then that's not a good guardian, they don't deserve to have the animal back and all that kind of stuff. And I just think like we have to let go of that. And so I just wonder if that isn't part of it. That, if the animal's loose and we can do whatever we want, versus really thinking about, what family is waiting for them.
Right. And I think the best thing we can do as animal welfare professionals is have conversations with our rescues. Animals are property, as much as we don't like to hear that, and there are property laws. And bad things happen to good people and bad things happen to good dogs and cats. And I think more dialogue with our rescues to encourage them. I think back to a rescue in Sacramento. It wasn't really a rescue, it was a cat sanctuary. And they would take in little cute adoptable dogs that people would find, and they'd never posted them on social or on their website. So essentially the owners would never, ever find their animals. And I had repeated conversations with them. I think that's a real disservice. So I don't think we can mandate anything yet, but I think talking about it and putting it into terms of what if it was your pet? I mean, even the best pet owners could have an accident.
Well, and pets are considered family. A high percentage of people in America believe their pets are their family members. So why would you prevent a family member from being found? I mean, you wouldn't keep. Well, it doesn't sound like they would do this anyway, but someone's grandmother who was wandering on the street and not let their family know.
Yeah, 100%. Good question from Chris Fitzgerald, who's trying to figure this all out. How do the dogs that are held by finders get posted on your website?
Oh, well, we have on our website, we have a whole page that's devoted to lost and found. So all kinds of resources for, how to look, where else you should be looking. And any animal that comes in that's identified as a stray automatically gets included on the website. So we just are drawing from PetPoint to do that. So, and I'm happy, Chris, to connect you with, because again, I don't do this myself. So, but with the people that do, it's very easy.
Jen,
go ahead.
I think someone named Jen Algar. Did you have a question, or did your cat have a question? Because I see a lot of, I don't recognize the numbers. So I just wanted to make sure that we weren't missing a question if there was one. No answer. Okay.
Okay. So Anne, if a person who finds an animal and fosters elects to adopt, are you just doing the 3-day stray hold, or are you extending that in order to try and find an owner? How are you managing that?
Yeah, so we are holding, we don't let people adopt for 2 weeks, just to make sure that there's some time.
Cool, thank you for doing that. And then I think we kind of touched on this question. Do you charge them an adoption fee if they've had the animal the entire time?
Well, I just learned that yes, we are. I wish we weren't. So I'm going to change that. I don't think that we should.
I mean, I think if you're microchipping the animals, having it spayed and neutered on their
Right.
behalf, doing
Right.
that, of course, 100%. And I don't think most people would object to paying that. But if the animal's already fully vetted, I don't know what you're charging them for.
We've done nothing for them, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to brainstorm that, kind of the different categories.
Yeah. This is something that I never saw except for maybe once or twice, having issues with owners who find their pets and the animal is in foster and the foster refuses to give the animal back. You seen that?
So far, we haven't had that. That was certainly one of the worries. And it's interesting. One of the worries was just kind of negligence generally. Like, what if these are bad people? I'm like, if they're bad people, why are they going out of their way to save these animals and bring them to us, right? So if they made that effort, I would assume they're good people. It's just that sort of stranger danger thing that we have, right? Like, we don't know who these people are, so they probably have bad intentions. And it's like, no, they're really trying to help. And why don't we help them help?
Right. I really believe most people are good, or we wouldn't stay in the lines on the freeway and stop at red lights, right? We would just be running amok. I do think most people are good. I do like what Tammy said, that her take on owners claiming a stray for resources is more like, who cares, right? If they need the help, they need the help.
Right. Well, that's true. If they actually asked for the help, we would have given it to them anyway.
Question from Lori Daly Johnson again. Is there an app in development that shelters can use to show lost and found animals similar to the Home to Home app? Interestingly, Best Friends is working on a mothership platform that all of the, I don't know if I could say this correctly, all of the lost and found resources that we have, like Finding Rover and, all of the things will feed into one platform. And I can't even remember the name of it right now, but there is work being done in that area. I just don't know how long it'll be before it's legit. I know they're going to pilot it with ACOs in the field. They have a couple of cities working on that. And then a cat on the keyboard. I was wondering what all those letter threes were. It never fails. There's always a cat butt or a cat something. And how many volunteers help with the roam team? And do you have SOPs for each job the volunteers help with?
We do not have SOPs, but I'm happy to put together some kind of brief outline. And there are 5 people, with one like Uber volunteer who's really so passionate about this. But so in addition to creating the program, essentially, she's the one that's expanding it by bringing in other volunteers and getting their support.
Nice. I know that in Sacramento, we had guidelines for the use of Nextdoor, and I'm happy to share them with folks if they want to see it. I know that, I don't want to miss any other questions, but man,
I think you're good.
Again? Huh?
I think you're good.
Okay, good. Thank you. Well, let's talk a little bit about the unintended positive consequences of Nextdoor, because I just think if people knew how valuable it was. We started in 2017 in Sacramento. I think we were one of the first shelters in the country to use Nextdoor with our own login, posting to every neighborhood from which a dog came. We didn't do cats. And we could quantifiably show an increase in RTO or RTH rates as a result. But man, all the other stuff, you're always on the minds of your community, subliminally and kind of intentionally too. And I challenge you to capture those comments, ask your volunteers, all the positive comments, the raising of awareness that results, because people are like, oh my God, I had no idea there were so many stray animals in our town. And then we saw a rise in donation revenue and community support across the board. And that was the only major change we made that year. And I have to think that was connected to Nextdoor. It's such a beautiful platform, especially for government shelters.
So we have about 5 more minutes. So if anybody has any other questions they want to ask, I'm noting that Kim shared with us that the Best Friends app will be beta testing, is called Home Fast.
It doesn't sound remotely familiar. I'm going to go back through my notes. Is that
Okay.
right, Sharon?
That's what it says. That's what Kim is telling us, Kim Domorowski. So if anybody hasn't gotten a question asked, we do have 5 more minutes, but if you want to have a continue the dialogue and talk a little bit more, there is a Maddie's Pet Forum group for No Place Like Home that you can continue the conversation.
And thank you, Kim. Yes, it's Pet Chain behind the scenes. I didn't know they were going to call it Home Fast. Good name.
Mhm.
Sharon, are we out of time?
Almost. We have like 3 minutes.
Okay. Did we miss anything?
Anyone in the audience have any other questions? Oh, there's a question from Joe about being able to post to Nextdoor if you're a NGO with government contracts.
It gets a little tougher there. I would contact your government contact, and it's usually the county board of supervisors or the city manager's office. It would be the PIO that has the keys to Nextdoor. Typically, Nextdoor is managed by police and sheriff's departments. It took a Herculean effort for us to get it in Sacramento. It was essentially a volunteer went to the council member and complained because I was turned down initially. NGOs have to pay a fee. Nextdoor is, a moneymaker. So you have to buy essentially a Nextdoor membership, if you will. We're working, I know that Best Friends and Michelson and there is another group also communicating with Nextdoor because it's such a useful platform for animals. So stay tuned for that. But if you don't ask, the answer is always no. And you could always use Sacramento and Oakland as examples. And it's a money saver, right? Animals aren't coming in or they're not staying as long. And that resonates with, the decision makers that it's better for the community, their constituency, and also saves money. How did we do, Sharon? Did we cover all the bases?
I think so. The link for Nextdoor is in the chat. Give people a couple minutes to check that out. Charlotte posted that for us. Yeah, if anybody has any further questions, please post them in the forum. And we're asking all of our Huddle speakers to, check in and answer questions. And we even have some of the folks from the software companies. So PetPoint and Shelter Love and Adopt a Pet. April Harris has joined the calls because she helps a lot of shelters. Chameleon, I feel like there's another one, Animal Sheltering. One more, Shelter Buddy. That's the other one. So they're all in the forum, and we'd love to have you guys all, ask more questions. And we're excited to hear what you guys are up to for the No Place Like Home Challenge. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, that's a good question from Tammy. Are there any plans by PetPoint to make an interface for people to upload a lost pet and upload directly into the software? We were doing that in Sacramento, but I believe there was some human intervention involved. But it's one of the best things you can do is post like a courtesy post for the lost and found and have them be public viewing without having them count as intake. Yeah.
Tammy, post that in the Maddie's Pet Forum chat, and we'll make sure that PetPoint addresses that question.
Yeah, the shelter software companies are definitely paying attention to what we're doing and want to facilitate ease of use for us. Yes. So the more we share our needs, I think the better that they will become for us.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everyone. And yes, Irene posted the next huddle is going to be next Tuesday, 10 a.m. Pacific, all about laws and regulations. Thank you, Irene.
Okay.
Have a great
Another
afternoon.
huddle down. Yay.